Okay. Ready? First of all, when Marge passed away, this bulletin board was next to her desk, and and up there are almost all of the LCs and field secretaries, as we used to call them, while she worked here. There's other people up there as well, but on the blue background are what she considered her bosses. And she was hired by Buck Buchanan in '64, I believe. But she's got Boyd Bulgy up there, and of course Dr. B, as she called him. He liked to be called Dr. B. Bracestead, and then Otto Helm, and me. And there's Bob Weisensell and Frank Stevenson. And between Larry and me, it's in Delta Chi law, between executive directors, they could engage a guy and give him the title administrative secretary. And that's Mike Gallagher from Penn State, who filled in between Larry and me. Stevenson and Weisensell worked for Larry, and they were hired by Bracestead, and there's some stories about that. Bracestead had a giant desk, and behind it he had a big credenza, and in the credenza was a locked file drawer. And he kept his secret files in there, and they tried to get in that locked file drawer, but they couldn't without damaging the credenza. Now supposedly when Bracestead left, he took those files and put them out in the general file correspondence. They found them, considered them so negative, I'll just say, that they burned them. I can't believe, I understand, I think a better choice would have been to hide them for 50 years, but don't burn them. But that's what they did. We left the executive director's office, but I'll talk about it somewhat. There's only two places you could put certainly that giant desk. One is dead center in the middle of the room with your back to the front window, which is how Larry had it. And Bracestead had it where when you walk in, it was right to your right, and behind him was his credenza. And their interpretation was they both reflected the personalities involved. Power play in the center, and secretive, with the credenza, with his back to the wall and the credenza. I think you read too much. I sat there when I came in and I said, well, where in the hell am I going to put my desk, or the desk? And the answer is I had it both places over time. When Keith Shriver became the exec, he called me and asked me if I wanted the desk. And what the heck am I going to do with it in my house? And so he got rid of it and got rid of the credenza. Those two side chairs with black leather were Bracestead's side chairs. He had a high back black leather chair, and you need a high back with your if you're sitting in front of those windows, because it pulls the heat right out of you otherwise. But Marge's boys, as she called them, and people would find out that she collected buttons, and so people would either leave or send her buttons. She's missing a few in the first couple of years. Try to think what else about that board. Oh, the draw too. Marge loved to play cards. The back room that's locked where the servers are, when I came in '75, and I should talk about that visit, they had the break room in that small room. They just sat around a table for around 15 minutes, then went back to work. When I came, I said, we should play cards. Well, Marge loved to play cards. Loved to play cards. And so we played cards. We played 2 games, Uno and a card game called Oh Hell. And she loved them both. So that's what the Uno cards are about.
How long did she work here?
She worked here from '64. She was supposedly hired to help get out, part-time to help get out a mailing. I always joked with her that she hadn't gotten the mailing out yet. She worked, I think, 44 years. She rallied. She was declining. One time I stopped in her office and I said, Marge, we should talk about your retirement. And she said, I'm never going to retire. When it comes time that you think I need to leave, just tell me and I'll go get another job. I let her go at that. And she rallied for the Vegas convention. And she got to ride a scooter around, which helped her a lot. And she came back and then went into decline again. Conventions always energized her. Meeting the undergraduates that she dealt with by mail and phone, and she got to meet them in person. That meant a lot to her. And she'd no telling what time in the morning she'd be in the office straightening things out and getting ready for the day. But she came back from convention and started declining. So much so, she quit coming to break and quit playing cards, which was a real sign that Marge was declining. She didn't want to, I think, embarrass herself by making mistakes at cards. And she died, I think, in November. I don't recall, October or November. The fraternity, Rathine really helped here. It was Rathine's idea that we would pay $10,000 towards her funeral. She was worried sick they wouldn't have enough, the family wouldn't be able to afford to bury her. So we gave them $10,000 for the funeral. We paid it to the funeral home. And that helped them a lot. Marge would have been real happy about that. Since I'm talking about Marge, I'll tell the story I told at the gravesite. I don't think it's written any place. I was hired in the fall of '68, but I was teaching at Southeast Missouri. Gary wanted me to quit my job in mid-year. I said I wouldn't do that. I would fulfill my contract. He said, well, then come up to Iowa City as often as you can. And that's when Mike Gallup, and then Larry Autohelm actually worked through the end of December of '78. And then he said he deserved 1 week of paid vacation. And they paid that in the first week in January of '69. I came up from Southeast. I turned in my final grade, packed as much as I could into my car and drove up here middle of May of '79. Thereabouts. I was in the office 2 weeks when the first FEA meeting I was going to attend occurred in St. Petersburg, Florida at the Don Cesar. And I called home, we called back here, and Mike Gallagher, who was filling in between Larry and me, told me that the secretary, Rose, I believe her name was, had quit. I said, okay, put an ad in the paper and I'll deal with it when I come back. The second call, Mike Gallagher had quit, and he was supposed to work through the convention. But he had found a job, I think, with U.S. News and World Report. And so be it. And the third call back, Marge had ruptured a disc, was in the hospital, and the doctor said she'd be out of work for 3 months, in bed. To fill in the rest of it, besides that, Brad DePriest had been hired as an LC for the school year, but he quit in December of '78. And Ken Shepard was the other LC, and he stayed on to run the '79 convention in Iowa City, really Coralville. And he did that, and then he left staff. So I had to hire new people. I came back from Florida, went to the hospital to see Marge with Janet. And Marge was driving her doctor nuts, wanting out of bed, wanting to go home, wanting really to go to work. And she finally wore him down, and she promised she would stay at home, stay in bed for 3 months. He let her out the next day. She checked out and drove to and got driven to the headquarters and worked the rest of the day, and she never missed a day after that. I'd find her on the floor in pain, trying to stretch out her back. I told her, Marge, I can't let you do this. You need to go home. And she said, if you make me go home, I'll have my son come and get all my files and my typewriter, and I'll work at home, and nothing will be in the right place, and it'll be harder on me. I said, Marge, do what you want to do. I told that story at her service, and that's the first time her family heard what she had done. I assume they thought I was a jerk and made her work. But they understood that's how Marge would be. So that's Marge. So when she died, it only seemed fitting to me that her bulletin board with her boys be up here with the boys.